Hey there, ladies and gents, I'm Galahound19, and for today's episode, I wanted to work with Attack on Titan, that super popular anime series, but I just couldn't decide on what topic to pair it with, whether to turn them into sci-fi characters or venomizing them or whatever. So, here's my first ever variety episode, a bit of everything!
Okay. This crazy sci-fi adventure story all began with a certain Ymir founder, chief scientist at Eldian Industries. She made a miraculous scientific feat with her invention, a new fusion core generator, a renewable energy source that should have been a helping hand to humanity, but it turned out to be a digital Pandora's box. Ymir had good ideals, but the heartless board of directors she worked for, well, they did not. They just patent-pended her invention and sold it off piece by piece, drip-feeding the public, you might say, as Eldian Industries were making billions worldwide. And shortly afterwards, those board of directors took things too far. They went and bought a freaking island. They went from a deplorable company to a sovereign nation, developing technology and weaponry years ahead of the rest of the world. And well, you can imagine things got real bad real fast from there, with whole countries jealous and threatened with Eldia's rise to power. Ymir pleaded with the board of directors, but they refused to give away the fusion core schematics or any of their technological advancements. So, lines were drawn, political disputes led to espionage, which led to conflict, which escalated to all-out war. Eldia, being a newly founded nation, was seen as easy prey at the time. But with the fusion core generator at their disposal, they developed machinery of nightmarish capabilities. And the most horrifying of all was the Titan program. Those arrogant boardroom buffoons couldn't have taken that title more literal. They amassed a line of giant robots. And I don't mean that metaphorically. They built city-crashing, civilian-squashing, giant killer robots. I mean, what had those anime-obsessed nerds been drinking when they made that decision? Anyway, one of these robots was called Armored Behemoth. I remembered it because the damn thing stepped on my Mercedes with its 10-ton foot. Personal feelings aside, the Armored Behemoth acts as an escort for the Eldian Special Forces on their ground assaults. As a war machine, it is adept in both defense and offense, equipped with Gatling guns, rocket launchers, all that standard stuff for a robot. But it seems the pilot of this particular killing machine prefers to go old school by recklessly charging into battle with jet-propelled takedowns and rocket-powered soccer punches. Kinda like American football but with toaster ovens, or WWE if it wasn't so fake. The Armored Behemoth was pretty much leading the Metal Army, smashing through walls and rumbling through enemy territory. Eldia had amassed a military might with the potential of conquering the entire world. At least that was until Ymir founder finally had enough of her boss's outrageous antics. The woman rejected her cruel masters and took control of her own fate. She created an override virus, allowing her to remotely shut down every robot within a 200-mile radius, shutting them down permanently. I have to say, it felt so anticlimactic. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm relieved those big clunky machines aren't stomping around my neighborhood, but you'd think such a high-tech nation would have a better antivirus software. There was the odd few robot battalions left up and running, so the war wasn't over. Eldia was left with no choice but to withdraw the remaining forces back to their island stronghold, fortifying it in every way you can imagine. After making enemies with pretty much the entire world, they need to put up some pretty big walls.
And now for some design notes. Admittedly, this design right here ended up being the most time-consuming, where I was trying to put as much detail into the background as I was with the character. It was just, with my current rendering skills, I ended up going back and forth with this design. Don't get me wrong, I am pretty happy with it all in all. I'm just hoping that as I progress as an artist, I would be able to turn out designs at a quicker and more efficient pace. But enough about that. Let's get on with the next design. Not long after inheriting the powers of the female Titan, Annie Leonhardt was dispatched on a scouting mission with a small platoon of Marleyan soldiers, a minor task to build up for a larger scale campaign. Annie remained calm and composed for her task. She had spent most of her life training her body and mind to inherit the female Titan, and its vicious, versatile powers matched her perfectly. But her years of training could not prepare her for the nightmare to come. Her newly found powers was about to be put to the most extreme of trials. It began with some of her squad mates calling out strange sightings, like some shadowy figure was stalking them. So they took what little time they had to spare and went to searching, but found no sign of anyone else being in the area. So they just wrote it off as paranoia and turned their attention back to the task at hand. But then, shortly afterwards, came a problem they could not ignore. One by one, squad mates began disappearing without a trace nor explanation. Their mission was being jeopardized by an unknown enemy who was striking from the shadows with vicious precision. These were veteran soldiers, heavy hitters, so who or what could be picking them off like this? That question ran through Annie's now frustrated mind over and over. The girl's blood began to boil with anger, and that had unknowingly put a target on her back. Soon enough, it came for her, and it was a living black sludge-like substance moving around like a multi-headed serpent. Drawn to Annie's anger, the girl did not hesitate. She instinctively assumed Titan form, but that turned out to be a costly mistake. Amassing to a 14-meter Titan, she stomped on the black creature, but its goopy body just spread it across her leg. Like venom, it was quickly spreading to every inch of her Titan body. Annie tried to rip the creature off of her, but it was no use. She had no idea how to fight it, and once it was about to reach her head, she knew she had no choice. Annie ripped herself out of her Titan body, out through the nape of the neck. figuring she could at least get away and come up with a new plan of attack. As the girl was running away, she looked back, assuming to see her Titan body starting to evaporate, but it was not. Instead, it started moving on its own. The black creature had somehow taken control of her now absent Titan body. A shark-tooth grin spreaded across its face as it looked at Annie. The girl knew there was no way she was going to outrun it now. She assumed Titan form again, this time with the intention on finishing the fight. The venomized Titan charged at her, but Annie slid across the ground and delivered a spin kick that shattered the monster's kneecaps. She then grabbed her enemy and slammed their freaky face into the dirt. Annie clawed and teared at the nape of its neck. That's usually every Titan's weak spot, but it wasn't working. This black creature had somehow improved on the Titan's physiology. A flurry of tendrils then shot out from its body, pushing Annie to one side. The fight went on for what felt like hours, with precise jabs and kicks and vicious tendril lashes. Annie was struggling to hold her enemy at bay. Their fight was nearing a cliffside, with Annie being pushed closer and closer to the edge. But that was exactly what she wanted. Annie gave the signal to her remaining comrades, just a handful of soldiers with anti-Titan rivals. It wasn't enough to kill it, but it was enough to distract the venomized Titan, with rounds and rounds of gunfire tearing through its wretched flesh, giving Annie just enough time to grab her enemy and throw them off the cliff. She watched the venomized Titan fall for miles and miles down the canyon. It was so deep she could barely see the bottom. As things finally began to quiet down, she asked herself, is it really over? Or is this just the beginning of something new and dangerous? And now for some more design notes. I kinda had the same issues here with my last design, where I'm super happy with it character-wise, just not so much background-wise. I don't do a lot of venomizing designs, so admittedly, I kinda experimented with this one. And I'm happy enough with it to use it as the thumbnail for this episode. I hope you're all happy with it also. Here it is, the venomized female Titan.
Oh, finally! I didn't think those guys would ever tire from the sounds of their own voices. Now it's my turn, and do I have a story for you? It begins with a pair of brothers, Marcel and Parco. The two of them had grown up in poverty, having to pinch pennies to get by. Marcel was humble and saw joy in the little things, but Parco was hot-blooded with dreams of grandeur. One day, the brothers received an offer that neither one could refuse. Recruitment into the German naval forces. Marcel had little interest with the military, but was in need of the benefits they were offering, and Parco simply took it as his chance for greatness. As soon as the brothers enlisted, they were fighting night and day to climb the ranks. Parco saw every other cadet as his rival, but he especially disliked a young man named Reiner. The two of them were often fighting, with Reiner questioning Parco's loyalty and Parco undermining Reiner's worth. Why, I just love a bitter rivalry. It can bring the best and the worst out of someone. Such drama. Anyway, Marcel did his best to keep his little brother out of trouble. And where Porco appreciated it, he couldn't bring himself to put it into words. The boy's pride was just too big to swallow. At least it was until final selection. Porco couldn't believe it. Both his brother and his rival were chosen, except for him. He had given it his all, only to fall short. He had lost his chance for greatness. And that was precisely when I came into the picture. Being the demon that I am, I offered him a deal. Within my power, I would grant him one wish of his choosing. In exchange, he'd simply have to do whatever I ask of him. The boy was skeptical at first, but eventually he agreed. Although his wish caught me somewhat off guard, I had expected he still wanted to be a naval soldier, or that he was gonna wish to be rich and famous. But no, he wanted revenge on who ruined his chance for greatness. He'd assumed that Reiner had cheated his way up the ranks. It didn't sit well for Porco watching that guy live happily ever after. So I granted his wish, but it didn't turn out the way he'd imagined. He thought it was Reiner who cheated, but it was actually Marcel, his brother. He had sabotaged his little brother's grade to keep him out of the fight, to keep him out of danger. The wrong things for the right reasons kind of a deal. But a wish is still a wish. And Porco wasn't specific enough on the terms. So I made Marcel pay for his transactions. Pay with his life. Porco was left traumatized after what he had caused. But he still had his end of the deal to uphold. Naturally, his human heart wasn't in it, but I didn't need that. Just a healthy body to conduct my experiment. You heard correctly. I wanted to see if I can transmute a mere human into a demon. It's no secret that I have little to no morality. And it's not like Porco had the power to back out of a demon's deal. So I pinned him down and started my experiment. And after long hours of his painful screams and my strenuous work, I had done it. I had turned him into a demon. Not one as powerful as I, though, but still. He'd grown roughly 7 meters in height and body mass, with sharp claws and jagged spikes protruding from his shoulder blades, a long, ugly tail, and the most iconic was his new skeletal face that was perpetually on fire. Porco wanted to be great. Now he was stronger, faster, and more psychologically broken than ever before, with enough firepower to waste an entire city. Why, I had outdone myself.
Yeah, I kinda ran out of time for design notes, so here's the finished result for my Demon Titan thing.
I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I have, and if so, like, comment, and subscribe so we get more videos like this. But for the meantime, why not check out my Disney Villains Monster Mashup episode, or my Soft Drinks as Superheroes episode. Now those are some major fun ones.